Good morning, everyone. Ooh, it's nice to have everyone here. Okay, I hope everyone is pumped today for the webinar. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction of what the Grow My Business webinar is. It's your first time, welcome. So our Grow My Business webinar, we started during the pandemic. That's about last year. So it was an avenue for us to have business owners, probably for us to give resources and tools for businesses so they can use to grow their business. So we speak to industry experts around the world on their business experience, touching on different sectors and also different topics that you can use to grow your business. So we have a whole lot of bank and resources on our YouTube channel. So if you would like to check that out, you can check that out after this webinar. You can find that on our YouTube. It's called our YouTube channel is called Flutterwave. So you can find all those resources in our playlist. So today we're having Andrew Bloch. So he's going to be speaking about paying yourself as an entrepreneur. Before he goes into his session, I'm just going to set a few house rules. So this webinar is being recorded. So you would have this in your inbox by the end of the week. And if you don't receive that, you can always check our YouTube channel. We have that. It will be live on our YouTube channel. And also, if you have any questions during the sessions, because we're going to have Q&A last. So if you have any questions, there's a box that says Q&A, so you can drop that so it doesn't get lost in the chat. And yes, so today we're having Andrew. He's the CEO and founder of Kaomi Marketing, which is a performance agency. And funny thing is that he has a degree in theology and he used to be a youth leader before he dived into digital marketing, which he's focusing now on Google Ads. So I'm going to hand it over to him, which is going to take his session, paying yourself as an entrepreneur. And he might just as well do another quick introduction about himself. Hi, Andrew.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Sean. I hope, yeah, can you hear me all right? Is that all good?
Yes, I can hear you.
Cool. Let me just move that over. Yeah, so good job on Kaomi Marketing. You got it right there. I'll explain where we got the name from in a moment. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Today, yeah, I'll be talking through how you tackle this challenge of how much, should you pay yourself? When do you pay yourself as an entrepreneur? And I think it's a decision, at least for most bootstrapped or early stage founders, that is quite difficult to answer. So hopefully I can share some light on that and yeah, give you some, food for thought on how to tackle your situation where you're at. Just some more background about myself. So firstly, I'm a husband and a father to a little 3-year-old boy. I'm 27 years old. I am a vitamin B12 growth addict. I've literally had tests done on myself and I need like more vitamin B12 than most people. At the moment, I'm living in the UK in a little town called Retford, close to Sheffield. Moved over to the UK from Durban, South Africa during COVID last year. And yeah, currently based up here, looking to probably move down to London next year. But what's the point of being in London during COVID? So it's been really nice living in the countryside for now. Yeah, so 5 years ago, started a digital agency focused on performance marketing. My key role in that business was business development, really getting new clients, getting the portfolio built. And then over time, it's been advising clients on particular areas around SEO, PPC, and analytics, which is essentially our strong point. Most of that is within Google's suite and getting people, to get more traffic and sales from Google. On the side, I've always been an ad tech enthusiast, which is essentially understanding how to automate and deploy ads at scale through different technologies. And on that, I've been teaching myself SQL and Node.js at the moment. So we have a cool new product coming out pretty soon on that, just currently in beta testing. But yeah, my work experience, I started off as a youth leader, running with about 40 teenagers at one stage in South Africa, taught me a lot around people, a lot of around how to motivate people who aren't getting paid to do something, and how to motivate teenagers, of course. Then got involved in some startups. I'll talk through those in a moment just to set the context. Did a lot of WordPress freelancing, and then got into PPC, which is essentially pay per click, and got to work with some international agencies. And all of that mix has, resulted in kind of the context and the person who I am today. Since we're talking about finance, I thought when you start off, everyone shares their fancy ride. This is what I rode around in for the first 2 years of starting the business. It's a 2004 Corsa Light. Just to share a brief story before we get into it, but we went to close a deal that was from a monthly retainer, was probably about 6 times the value of that vehicle, and walked in and chatting to the senior directors around the decision, thinking, if we sign this deal, I better sign it first before we walk back to, if for some reason they walk back into the parking lot, they're going to see me sitting in my little Corsa Light. But I think that is the story of entrepreneurship, and I think it's something I really want to touch on today, that the start is not necessarily as glamorous as most people think. And things like the Ferraris and the Porsches, if they do come, they would come at a much later stage. But I think there's definitely a delusion state that some founders can get in, where they think everything's around the money and the flashy stuff that's going to come from it, but it really is not like that for the first good period of how you get started. Cool. So a little bit more around Kayomi. It means click in Hawaiian. We're a digital marketing agency, but more so a performance agency. And our value system and our values drive us to think around how we can empower marketers. So that would be our team, the teams that we work with, and we give them a unique experience where we understand who they are as people and what they're trying to achieve. And then we, figure out situations where we can empower them and use their talents to really lead industries for our clients and put our clients, ahead or doing something that's disruptive in their space. There's 4 offerings with that, but I won't go further into that. So if you're talking around finance and founders finance, I think we should talk around failures, because most businesses or entrepreneurs fail because of how they manage their personal money. It is difficult because if there is no money, how do you manage your personal money? But just some first-hand failures that I went through. So initially I was involved in a fleet surveillance startup for 2 years. We had a pretty bad business model in hindsight. There was a very high cost to entry, and we just didn't forecast the actual costs with that, and we didn't know what needed to happen to get that scaled, but put a ton load of effort into that, a good portion of my life into it, and we essentially just ran out of core funding and decided to close at that point. Other little businesses I was involved in, we ran a rugby ticket sales business, did phenomenally well, and we used SEO as pretty much the main tactic, and then just to some compliance issues that were outside of our hands, we were forced to close. But I learned a lot on that point of view. It was quite a nice, small side business that generated good cash quite quickly. Then I ran an e-commerce store in Hong Kong, had a connection living there, and we sold products to expats living in Hong Kong, was specifically a German store. Learned a lot around international e-commerce and how to scale into a new region, but unfortunately, I don't think we did enough market analysis. We just didn't understand specifically the market we were going into. And then lastly, I was involved in a manufacturing startup that had a very good mix of founders, probably the best mix you could find. But we just dived right into solutions mode, building websites, solving things that weren't problems yet, and we didn't necessarily have a business to get going with. So we got lost in a lot of those details, and they weren't really relevant. So you can only imagine all of those were largely unprofitable and took a knock, on me personally from a financial point of view. So a lot of that just, hopefully speaks to some of the experience I've had when we talk around, starting out. But Joff, so first question, you will see generally I do these in an interactive forum, but you can just kind of ask yourself it. But as an entrepreneur, when should you pay yourself? Do you pay yourself as you start the business when it has no money? Do you pay yourself and then, you know, declare a salary on paper and now you have to pay the tax portion to the relevant authorities wherever you live? How do you navigate that? And when do you get to a point, you know, of saying, cool, I should earn at this point? My one key thought to that is to think as though you are the best staff member you're ever going to hire. You are the best employee you're ever going to find. And you could consistently keep hiring, and we're at that stage now, and you will still very rarely find staff who can put out as much as you can as the founder, as the entrepreneur starting that. So my answer to that simple question is yes, as soon as you can pay yourself, you should pay yourself. And we'll talk through some of those habits that come through that. But I think it's a very key part in ensuring that you yourself can stay in the game. If you're knocked out personally and you're financially in a situation that's quite difficult, you're not going to be arriving every day and giving the business what it actually needs. Second question, quite contentious and different opinions on it. Do you use credit cards to, you know, leverage certain things to get into a certain situation? I've heard mixed responses around it from all sides. I think there's a lot of negative association to this, but using credit cards correctly was essentially how, yeah, personally, I got to a much better cash flow point of view. I'll talk through some of those tactics in the future, but in the session, but just to get your thoughts around it. Should you use a credit card? How do you get, you know, healthy credit if it's not a credit card? And what are the means you need? And what do you need to have in place before you actually start a business if you were, say, employed before? Then an interesting one, and I thought to add it in here, and if we get through it, you know, a little bit, we'll talk through it. But do you sell equity? And if you're looking to pay yourself as an entrepreneur, are you motivated to bring in an investor just so that you can get a salary? Because if that's your motivation, most investors are going to be deterred by that because they don't just want to come in and pay you a salary. Maybe they're, you know, of goodwill and charitable, but the investors want to actually grow the business itself and ensure that the business is scaling. So from that point of view, if you're looking just to get a salary out of something, I'd be very cautious to look at just selling equity. There are many other things you can do to manipulate your own financial requirements and to put yourself in a position where either you have lowered your living cost and you've put yourself in a situation where you don't have to sell equity, but you should really only look at that if you're going to be scaling the business. Lastly, a bank loan. I have seen some phenomenal businesses grow by producing really good business plans and getting a bank loan. It's really up to the founder and how risky they want to be around it. There are many other forms today, you know, of financing, but again, I would say very similar to the previous comments I had around should you sell equity. It's good to make sure that you're not just borrowing money to pay yourself a salary. As I said, there's many things you can do to try to reduce your own, you know, costs that you need at that moment in time, and focus on, you know, generating some early profit to cover that, and then maybe look at a bank loan at a later stage. Lastly, another question, and we'll just address these as we go through, but when do you give yourself a bonus or an increase essentially through stuff? What are kind of the metrics and the moments within the business that you need to be at before you can kind of consider that? So I'm just going to talk through what I think should be the definition of cash flow. I think a lot of people have, you know, more academic versions, but as an entrepreneur, you just want something really simple that you can, you know, there's a lot of comments like cash flow is king and all these things are true. But one of the most important things is to really understand how to measure what that term is. And when people say cash flow is so important, what does that actually look like? Is it a report from your accounting package? Personally, it's the lowest amount of money that you have in the bank at any moment in time. So if you have to pay your suppliers, pay your staff on a certain day, the amount of money left after that, so that low point that you get to, I view that as cash flow. So when someone says if you've got 6 months of cash flow in the bank, I would say you've got 6 months of what that low amount is that you're getting down to, plus in terms of covering that amount. So that is your lowest point. And then that month's cash flow would be deemed as the amount of expenses that you would be covering in your business. So it might seem like a huge chunk of change when you're getting started, but what you want to do is watch that low point. If you don't have, all the connections to have the right, accounting system linked, and, maybe it's not happening all in real time, you just want to make sure that at a simple, logical point of view, you're watching your bank balance and you know the moments where it gets low, and you want to do things to make sure that the bank account doesn't get that low. And if you can increase, the point at which it falls to, you will naturally start growing your cash flow, and focusing on that is going to drive the right outcomes. So some of my personal story, and this intertwines a lot between personal and business due to the nature of the topic. In 2017, I quit my job. I had been involved in some of those startups that I mentioned earlier, years prior to that. But essentially, we started the business with 11 months of hardly any salary. I use an app in South Africa called 22/7. I've literally got record of my financial history since then. And that screenshot on the right is essentially what 22/7 said my net worth was. I was in the negative at that moment in time. Surprisingly, I still had money in the bank just through stuff we were doing. But essentially, we went through 11 months of taking next to no salary from Kayomi. And it was, quite a tough start getting going. I think there's a couple of things I maybe would have done differently before I started. But all we did is we took a salary that was below the tax bracket. So in each region, wherever you are, there is a minimum, buffer before you have to start paying tax. That's the salary that we started paying ourselves. And the idea there was, if we paid ourselves more, we'd have to start paying tax on that money. This is going to, ensure that we're reducing the amount of expenses we have as much as possible. Then I went through and removed every single fixed payment we had. So from insurances that weren't necessary, phone subscriptions, Netflix, anything you can think of, getting, the most prepaid type internet package we could find. Essentially, what I wanted is to be in a personal point of view that if, besides paying my rent and, buying food and that, if I left my bank account, it wouldn't deplete. I wouldn't have reoccurring payments going off. And right by just literally removing all of that, it started, building some resilience, and I was able to, live on a lower amount of money. Thankfully, my wife was working and got promoted at that point in time, so we were able to get by. It wasn't necessarily a great scenario because we're both quite young, but we were very clear around where we wanted to be long term, and we knew the risks involved in it, and we were happy to do that rather than just getting, a stable employed position. So from a long-term point of view, what was the benefit of all those sacrifices? What was the benefit of doing that? If you see the story of me being involved in different startups and seeing them fail, I started realizing that, yes, the business and the state where the business was at has a part to play. But ultimately, if you are an entrepreneur or someone who enjoys starting businesses, you want to put yourself in a situation where you can keep doing this. Because businesses might fail and things around you can fall apart, you want to work on your own personal situation. So the goal that I have worked towards, and being very grateful to be at, is essentially to get 6 months of salary, 6 months of personal income in your personal bank account saved up, so that whatever happens, if the business died today, you would be able to cover all of your expenses for 6 months. Now, a lot of people might say that's very difficult to get to. It's actually a lot easier to get to once you start dropping your expenses. If you drop your expenses that are coming through and you're ruthless around, your outgoings, it's quite easy to actually start saving up a lot more cash flow at that point. We got to this point, and once you're at that point, once you start talking to investors or start talking, growth strategies or reinvesting money in your business, you're arriving at those conversations saying, what is the best decision for the business? What is the best decision, outside of where I am at? And the only way you build that confidence is actually having some buffer, having some, catch behind you. I wouldn't say entrepreneurs should go off and buy houses and buy cars and invest in other things. I think if you're a good entrepreneur, you should literally keep that money in a high interest account in the bank, and just know that you have that on hand at any point. The confidence that that's going to give you, and if it's not 6 months, it literally could be 1 month. The mental state that that's going to put you in, compared to not having that in the bank, is really going to serve you long term. It's going to help you make better decisions as you go through. So these are just some habits that we formed through the business that really helped us, and I've seen where these have not been implemented, businesses fail. And the one is to always pay yourself a fixed salary. This is, if you have no money, obviously in the business, it's not possible. But as soon as you are generating some income, pay yourself a fixed salary, regardless of what it is, and stick to that amount on a set day of the month. Treat yourself as an employee would in terms of getting paid. It'll start helping you handle things like your personal rent payments, and anything else that is sequential. And then only increase that, after a long period of time. Once the business is at a healthy point of cash flow, then start increasing yourself personally. Many founders out there get, sign 1 or 2 big contracts, and they give themselves a bonus or an increase very early, and the business may not be able to sustain that cost. We've done that before, where we took a bonus once, and it probably wasn't the right decision, because we misdiagnosed the situation where the business was at. And generally, for the first 5, even maybe 10 years of the business, you want to make sure you're putting everything back in as much as possible, but paying yourself a fixed salary on that's really going to help you meet your own obligations. Then the next one that I can't express enough, and this is just from experience of my own dad, who's run a business, and just other mentors that I've had, I would highly suggest you open a separate bank account and put your VAT, if you are VAT registered, and your tax forecast. So if you know what you think you're going to be paying in tax provisionally or annually at the end of the year, every single month, pay that money into that account. It is not your money. It is not your money to use as cash flow. It is not your money to mess with. Putting that aside and really getting it off and outside of most of your accounting calculations is a key decision that is going to save your business. Many businesses suffer because they do not plan for these and do not forecast for that. And it's just a really good habit to do. Then lastly, if you're going to get investment, make sure, as I said earlier, make sure that you use that investment to scale. If you are putting all your effort into it and the business is not profitable, maybe it is product driven, which is a slightly different, context. What we were doing is service driven. I'd say in a service driven business, if you're not profitable and you're putting all your effort in, getting investment's not going to help you whatsoever. From a product level, it varies based on how much time you need for research and development before you go to market, how much investment you need from to get going, and possibly you do need a salary from that point of view. But the principles of reducing your personal expenses, paying yourself a fixed salary for that period of time, if you are riding on an initial loan or initial investment, I would say those are still applicable to that situation. But don't view getting investment as a way to earn more money. If you are taking investment, investors want to know that that money is going to be focused on key bottlenecks within the business, and it's going to remove those bottlenecks to allow the business to actually scale further. Investment is not just a means to take a salary. These are just some little hacks to talk through, and just some thoughts to leave you with. But again, these are from a different point of view. It's not for everyone. You can do what you want to do, and multiple methods work. This is just how we got through it. Is we flipped our credit cards, so you get a large limit on your credit card. Get as many days as you can before you have to actually get charged interest on that and pay the entire credit card off. What this does is it can result in 2 to 3 months of additional cash. You're removing that lowest point within your actual bank account at any moment in time, and using your personal credit card and being smart around knowing what you can put through the business and what you can't put through the business allows you to benefit from reward systems. In South Africa, there's a system with FNB called eBucks. We use this extensively, and on any given year I was making a significant amount of points through that, and able to buy things like, you know, a washing machine, you know, additional like computer screens, whatever we needed through the business, we were able to fund through that. And that was, you know, a great system to go through. We also considered a lot of the lifetime costs up front. When you're starting out, there's a lot of software pieces that are focused on helping entrepreneurs scale because they don't have time to do everything. And we focused on finding some key ones that gave us a lifetime, you know, purchase. There were others that had large upfront costs, and we just did the math on it. And my suggestion is, if you do the math at the right moment, paying for things outright, whether it be software, technology, computers, it can really increase cash flow at a later stage. So if you are able to read the business and know where you're at and know what you have, going and getting contracts, you know, to get, you know, laptops, devices like that, all of those things at a later stage can start crippling your cash flow. So I wouldn't say try buy everything outright, but there are key moments where you can reinvest and actually recoup and grow your cash flow at a future date at some point in time. Lastly, any free vouchers or voucher deals. We used to, you know, if we had to eat out as a team, as an early stage team, we would get vouchers, you know, for that 50% off, or like buy one get one free. And having no shame attached to that's completely fine. Like, you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to start something that's meaningful. You're not going to be able to, you know, go out to a fancy restaurant and, you know, pay full price for everything. So you got to do what you got to do in those stages to, you know, cut costs. We were able to work from a co-working space occasionally, where we negotiated that we would do some of their marketing in exchange for free rent. Also huge help from a business point of view. And then lastly, initially we got a no interest loan from a friend, essentially. But if you need that to get going, it's a great mechanism. Doesn't have to be a huge amount of money, but it is amazing what you can do once you are thinking through all of these tactics to, you know, grow your cash flow. And once you get that initial no interest loan, if you've got the right mindset in place, you should be able to start scaling. At least in a service-driven business. A product-driven business is a different, you know, context altogether. But I think some of the principles do apply from there. Yeah, and then just kind of in closing a little bit, from a personal point of view, I touched on this, but just subscriptions can be dangerous if you have too many personal subscriptions or things that are running off every single month. There is a lot of risk attached to, you know, starting a business, and you need to calculate what, you know, insurances or subscriptions are useful. But at some stage, you do need to go all in and say, I'm committed to this business, I'm committed to this working. Cash reserves, having some personal cash reserves is going to really help you with confidence to get through. Understanding business expenses, where what can go through the business and is a viable business expense and what isn't, can really help you. I would suggest you educate yourself on this in whatever region you are in, and make sure, you know, if your internet can be paid through the business, pay that through the business. You're not paying the tax portion on that. It is a business expense if you're using that through the business. Likewise, things like fuel and, you know, eating out for, you know, client meetings and that, you can get a lot of that covered depending on what region you're in. And then lastly, a really good tactic here is to use a loan account within the business. And maybe this is a bit technical for some, you know, entrepreneurs who haven't got into the finance space, and I hadn't studied it myself beforehand. So a loan account is essentially a way where you can pay yourself money that doesn't actually transfer to your account. You're essentially saying the business owes me this amount of money. I need to pay tax on that portion, but I don't actually have the cash on hand, so I'm going to pay that. We use that quite often. If you understand the tax brackets and where you are at as an individual, you can start paying yourself ahead of time on this. And then there is things like interest-bearing earnings, at least, you know, that are considerable. And these are good ways also, and I don't think we'll get into it today, but these are good ways you can manage if you have multiple founders and there's not enough money in the bank to pay, you know, all of them for all the time they're putting in. You can start drawing up loan accounts where the business could start owing different founders different amounts of money based on the effort that they're putting in, so that later they can get paid back for their efforts that are coming through. And you can often balance that from a loan account point of view without having to constantly reevaluate equity and the decisions you made when the business started. So getting educated around loan accounts and what business expenses can go through is really going to help you. And then from a personal point of view, having a consistent salary, absolute game changer. I would really suggest that rather than paying yourself in large bulk payments whenever you can afford to. Then a business cash flow, and these are some tips. I think there's probably others out there more qualified to explain, how to do this. We've moved most of our suppliers to 30 days. There is a lot of views on that. A lot of people say you should pay your suppliers straight away. This really helped us get through COVID. This helped us grow, and we were able to increase some of the payments that we paid to suppliers in terms of the actual rate that they were charging us, and grow our cash flow at the same time. And the thing is, a lot of our clients were pushing us for terms, so essentially we were paying money that we didn't have on hand, and the business was getting stuck, that if we grew really fast we would have some challenges at that point in time. So putting your suppliers on terms is really helpful. Maybe you don't want to do this at first, but it really depends. We have made that decision. The next one, and again, these are just loaded, but these are our decisions. We focused just on hiring seniors lately. We came to realize that the amount of effort and general investment you have to make in a junior when you get started is literally unbearable for a startup. You need to break ground quickly and move fast, and trying to rely on a junior and putting that pressure on them is quite heavy in terms of a full-time employed state. So wherever we've had a more mid-level or junior type of work, we've resulted in rather contracting or finding freelancers for a specific outcome, and rather focusing that the core team itself is higher level contributors that are heavy hitting salaries. And by making that waiting for the right hire, we found a lot more traction than rather just trying to hire in what we can afford at each point in time. Another one that's really helped is from an insurance point of view, we've self-insured. We don't pay business insurance on all our devices. We are a pretty low asset-based company, but that was a really helpful decision. So we've been saving money and insuring ourselves and investing that every month. So if someone's computer breaks, we can literally walk to the shop and buy them another one the same day. I think insurance is largely overrated, but that was our decision. And then we focus on profitability. And we got to some points in time where we could generate 1 month's full expenses essentially every 3 months. So at a top level point of view, your net profitability is about 33%. Getting to that moment in time, probably long-term is not good for a business because you're hindering your own growth, but getting to that moment and focusing on the actual mechanics of the business really helped us understand where we can generate profit and where is our sweet spot. And I think if we didn't push to get to that moment, we wouldn't have grown past that. For a large business, staying at that level of profitability is probably not always the wisest decision, because you're losing on opportunities that you could be taking. But focusing on that regeneration process, how long does it take you to regenerate a full month's expenses through profit that's coming through, and planning that on paper and walking towards that moment is really going to help you solve some of these cash flow questions from there. Cool. I think if we're good for time, I can stop on that. The next session was just talking around if you had multiple founders and how to handle that.
So next we're having Peter. So he's going to be sharing what Flutterwave has for business owners in South Africa at the moment. Hi, Peter, are you there?
All right, guys. So welcome. Thanks, Andrew. That's really, really insightful. Even for myself as an old folk here as well. It's always insightful to listen to people developing their businesses and some tips on how to do it and how to best get it right. Like I said, my name is Peter. I'm the head of Flutterwave for South Africa. Whereas Flutterwave is a financial or a PSP, if you guys understand what that is. It's a PSP in South Africa and also across the world. So I'll run you a little bit through what we do and who we are, and also where we can try and assist you as an entrepreneur or as a business startup or something like that. Let me just quickly there we go. So who we are, we're a team of world-class entrepreneurs, financial service technologists, mobile payment experts working together to build Africa's payment infrastructure from the ground up. We started the business, GB, which is our founder and CEO, started the business about 8 years ago. We have recently been announced as being a unicorn in Africa. If you guys know what a unicorn is, for those who don't, a unicorn is a $1 billion business. So what we're trying to do is we're changing the way that the world does business with Africa, trying to keep Africa as a continent, not as a separated business or a separated country. Well, what we offer, so we offer end-to-end payment gateways, so there's no need for complex integrations. We can also white label our services out to a business. We do real-time payouts and disbursements in multiple currencies in 33 different countries currently in Africa, and in about 37 countries where we currently operate in. So there's zero infrastructure investment fees for a merchant or a client that's starting a business for payment service providers. So it does lower your business costs. Our business is fully owned, managed, and operated by Flutterwave, so we don't have third-party people that's operating our business for us. And we are open obviously 24/7 as well throughout. And it's also a consolidated online or mobile POS ATM payment switch for merchants and PSPs with a one-time integration. We also have obviously enterprise level security and compliance, where we have military grade data encryption. And also we are PCI DSS certification, so we're compliant for that. So especially on doing tokenization for card transactions, we have multi-factor OTP sensors, so all our transactions are 3DS in South Africa. And we do have a KYC and audit trail on a consistent basis as well. What we can offer you, an entrepreneurial business, is that you can open up an account with us free of charge, whereas you can start interacting with your clients to be able to pay you and you pay out to them in different currencies. So imagine having a e-commerce business selling a service or a product for that matter, whereas you need people to pay you. Instead of giving them your bank details in South Africa, you would give them a payment link where they can pay you via a payment link in multiple currencies throughout the world, for that matter, as long as it's a Visa card, MasterCard, or any card for that matter, as long as it's on our platform, we can utilize it. So on the payment collection side, so Flutterwave Checkout is the easiest way to collect payments from your customers anywhere in the world, on the web or on mobile. We've recently launched our mobile app. It's in the App Store in iOS and Android. It's Flutterwave, where you can, on the fly, allow people to pay you in different multiple currencies. You can also integrate into our platform with APIs, or if you have your own app, if you're busy developing an app at the moment, it'll help you as well, because we also have SDKs direct integrations for that. So we can collect payments in over 150 currencies all over the world, collect payments across multiple payments types and methods, so an i.e. cards, QR, mobile money, USSD accounts, etc. And we're adaptable to all websites and e-commerce plugins like WooCommerce, WordPress, and the like. You can also send money from with Flutterwave, which is quite nice, especially when you're an IMTO or something like that, whereas you can send funds to a different country via our infrastructure at the same time. We can also do single or bulk transfers, which is very similar to a bank account. So if you would need to pay multiple people in your business, in your entrepreneurial, your startup, you can pay them directly like that, from a bulk perspective or from a single transfer at the same time, all done via an API as well. So as I explained earlier, I said earlier, we have our mobile app. You can take your business obviously anywhere with you as well. So you wouldn't need to physically sit on your computer and doing all your business stuff for yourself. You can do it from your phone as well. So seeing collections and also doing payouts as well. One very unique thing that Flutterwave started in March last year as the Flutterwave store. So back in the day when COVID was still big, well, I suppose it's still pretty big at the moment, but when it was much bigger last year, we saw a gap in the market that was a lot of businesses couldn't function due to being closed, and all of them wanting to go online. So what we've created is a thing called Flutterwave Store, where people can actually upload their products and sell their products on an online store without having the need to pay a developer to develop a website for you to have all your products on there. So this is a free of charge app that we've got, or store that we've got. You can load all your products and sell your products from there. People can pay you directly from there. And you can also obviously disperse funds back into your own bank account as well from there. So on our dashboard, we actually give our clients a dashboard to play around with, whereas they can literally see how their business is functioning from a financial perspective. Whereas all your customers is in one place, the funds coming in, where they're coming from, what method are people paying you from or paying you with, whether it's via a card or bank payments or mobile money in Africa or M-Pesa in Kenya or anything like that. You can control who pays you when and how and how much, and you can do marketing campaigns based on that as well to try and assist you to push more branding or more product out to a specific like Facebook or Google ads or whatever the case may be. Then we also have the soft POS in South Africa. We also have POS and soft POS that we've launched recently across Africa. It might not be available in certain countries as yet due to some regulations that we're still busy working with, or regulators are busy working with. So, but we do have the POS option, and then the soft POS is tap on glass, if you want to call it that. In South Africa, we call it tap on glass, whereas you use your mobile device as a POS device, which is very unique in the industry. At the moment, we wouldn't need to have a physical device carrying around. So this generally helps for if you have a contracting business or something like that, and you, like a plumber or something like that, you go to someone's house that needs to fix something, and the guy needs to pay you, and he doesn't have cash on him. So therefore, you just tap on your phone with his credit card or his bank card, and the payment's being processed. We also have the secure payment links and pages, which makes it easier for clients to pay you as well. So we create an invoice. I'll get to the invoice page now, but you can create an invoice from within our platform, where you can send an invoice to a client via WhatsApp or via, well, the links via WhatsApp or USSD, or on your website for that matter. Whereas the guy just clicks on a link, it opens up a payment page. The guy can select which payment method he wants to use, whether it be card, bank, or whatever the case may be. You can also select the different currencies, and the client can pay directly like that, all 3D secure. As I explained, the invoices, so the nicest, you can see the invoices being paid out. When you create an invoice to a client, it also gives you the capability to advise you when it's due, when they've been paid, or when you haven't sent it out. Within that specific invoice, you can actually do multiple currencies on that as well. You can easily do your tax calculations on there if you're a tax registered business. And again, 150 different currencies. And you can, like I said, you can track your payments and overdue invoices at the same time as well. We also have a donations page that's for specific causes, which is specifically designed around, especially with COVID, where a lot of NGOs or NPOs needed to try and assist and help the countries that were less fortunate, or individuals that were less fortunate. So they created an NPO or an NGO, whereas you can utilize this also worldwide. So where clients or people can donate funds to your cause for that matter. We also then have the prepaid virtual cards, which is a very unique function as well. That has all the different, as you can see, Facebook, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, Google, all those on there, where you can create a virtual credit card where you can be paying for goods and services, where you don't necessarily want to put your own personal bank details in there for security purposes, which is quite nice as well. then the nice thing about our platform and our businesses is that we can build all on REST APIs. So it's extremely easy to develop and build it into your own existing websites. If you've got an existing website, if you don't, it's also fine. You can still use the payment links at the same time. And then we also have our VAS APIs, which is more to your USD setup, your USSD setups and stuff like that, and WhatsApp businesses, stuff like that. That'll also help you with that on APIs directed for that. The next steps for you guys, if anybody wants to get started with us, you can reach out to us. You can go to our website, flutterwave.com. And then you can just sign yourself up there. It's free of charge. There is a bit of a KYC process that happens in the background when you do sign up. And then from sign up, you are enabled to do credit card collections or card collections, bank payment collections, and payouts for that matter as well.
So if you have any questions regarding Andrew's session and also Peter's session, you can leave that you can put that in the Q&A, because right now we'll be jumping to the Q&A section so we can just answer all your questions. So the first one is, I think it's for Andrew. So if you hire your first 28 staffs as seniors, how do you afford to pay them?
It's a really good question, that. Yeah, I think, again, it's not a hard and fast rule. I think it's just a comment that got me thinking in the right direction. You need to make sure that the business model that you're going for can scale. And if you can't afford seniors early on, then there's work that's going to have to happen on the business scaling model. I wouldn't say that in isolation. I would say that you can still work with juniors, and not everyone has to be senior. I just would not hire, I wouldn't put a junior on payroll. I think just because you can get a lower cost to company, I would much rather draw up a contract and get them to drive a specific outcome, because what you don't want to do is start managing juniors too early. When you start as a founder, there's key things you need to do at that stage in the business, and a lot of it is to be quite operational. And if you land up in the situation where you are hiring people and you could do the exact same task as them, in a third or a tenth of the time, you don't want to be in that situation too early. You want to hire people who are going to add to the core value of the offering at a high level, and generally people who have experience in that domain, in that space, that can grow it a lot quicker. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's just been our own experience, and there's probably other stories where it has worked well, but I would just say just be very careful around who you bring onto payroll.
Thank you, Andrew. The next question is from Mfon. Is paying yourself according to a fixed percentage okay?
Yeah, so we use quite a lot of fixed percentages to calculate what our salary cost should be, what our profit should be at a quarter, or annually. But yeah, I wouldn't say calculating that. You want your payroll to run as smoothly as possible. So a set amount, every month is good, but you can definitely review that every 3 months. And if the percentage that you've agreed upon is doable, and you've been able to stay at that turnover that results in that percentage allowing you to get an increase, and you can showcase that for a consistent period of time, then yes, by all means, raising by a percentage, I think, is a good strategy. It's something we do, and I think it is something that does work well. If it's easy to understand, it'll probably work for you at that stage.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Andrew. The next question is, does it mean, from Dominic, does it mean startups shouldn't hire junior devs of any kind for their business? What if the startup currently can afford senior devs?
Yeah, we initially worked with the junior dev. We don't work with junior devs now. We just have senior devs on another project we're working on. I would say it depends on the complexity of what you're doing, but if you want to do something new and innovative, you need to borrow, and you need to speed up the process, and you need to borrow as much learnings from previous situations. The challenge of bringing in a junior is that they don't have transferable skills from any other industry or space that they've worked in. So I would say, I mean, most tech companies today, especially if they're getting investment, the investors are going to ask, is the founder technical, or do they have a good CTO? And if they don't have those two factors, trying to, as a non-technical person, trying to start a tech company, I think it was possible maybe 20, 30 years ago. But I think today, at how competitive things are, unless you have a technical person involved in the initial core team, it's extremely challenging to try get the amount of output and decision making around the tech stack that you need. So I would definitely not be thinking around hiring juniors in a technical application. If you were just building a basic website and you were selling products and you needed someone to help you with your store, then by all means using someone to do that. But it just depends if you're developing something from scratch or if you're using something that's already been built. That would be my answer.
Thank you. So this is for Peter. So Peter, they're asking, is the POS available in Kenya?
Hi, yes, Cindy, yes, POS is available in Kenya. Can you reach out to us at hi@flutterwave.com, and then we can try and assist you the best we possibly can to understand the use case behind what the requirement is for the POS in Kenya.
All right, thank you, Peter. So Andrew, there's another question. Someone says, I would like to talk to you about the e-commerce startup and challenges that came with it in detail. Would that be possible? I don't know if you want to share how this person can reach you.
Yeah, sure. My email's andrew@kayomi.co.uk. I'll reply back there and send that through.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know if they were specifically talking around the one that we did in Hong Kong. I mean, this is a very high level. What I realized around e-commerce stores, they have low conversion rates. You're talking, if you're getting 1%, you're very lucky, like at a global scale. Unless you have a lot of brand equity or something completely innovative, you're going to have a low conversion rates. It's just industry standard because there's like so many touch points in the process. So for an e-commerce store to scale, you need a lot of traffic. Because you have a low conversion rate, you need a lot of traffic, and you don't want to just get traffic for the sake of it. You need to think through, how do I bring people to my site before they're actually going to buy in that moment.
So another question is, how do you define performance agency? How much does this vary per client?
The difference of a performance agency, I'd say, is that we don't do, we just focus on ROI, so areas in terms of input versus output. So we want to know that, every rand, every pound, every dollar that's being spent is resulting in an outcome that's measurable at some point in time. That's not always the best way to market, but it's a good way to focus on a startup. So that would be kind of how we would define ourselves as different. You do get to a point in most businesses' lifespan where you no longer need performance marketing to get to the next stage. You need performance marketing plus other things like PR, brand equity, and that. So yeah.
Thank you. Someone asking, Isaac is asking, how are you able to handle medical insurance and other insurance covers?
Yeah, great question. We were quite grateful to find a very, very affordable hospital cover. I mean, we were newly married. We didn't have a child back then. Ultimately, it's down to how much are you willing to risk, for that period of time. I think a full-blown medical aid of any sort or anything extravagant is not what you need. So you just need to decide personally, what you need and that. But if you're young and in good health, and there's some form of, government cover or option, and you had no option, I wouldn't stop running a business just to have, medical cover. I don't think that's, the benefits you're going to get long-term should outweigh the risks of those decisions. But yeah, it's got to be a personal decision that you work through yourself. But yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. From Cindy, she's asking, how do you feel about paying the senior devs with equity versus paying with cash? If you're early stage, also, what percentage would you recommend?
Yeah, that is good. That's a very good question. I think that's the right way to think in terms of bringing your senior devs in. I think before I answer that, there's two types of software developers out there, or just technical people. You're either going to find someone who has the technical knowledge and they love the tech stack, and they maybe are a Microsoft person or a Google person, and they are stuck to that allegiance. And if they are quite rigid in the way they work and they are quite good at what they do, I would definitely be very cautious to give them equity, because they're not really looking for equity. They're looking to deploy their skill set at some scale. If you can find a technical person who has leadership ability to raise up juniors, to raise up other people around you, and you feel like this is someone who's going to stay with you for a long period of time, and if they do their job well, they're going to be leading a team and not writing code. So if you can see that in them and they have the ability to lead a team and not just write code all day, I would definitely consider giving them equity involved in that process. Most of the successful tech companies today, all of the founders can write code. All of them can output and fix bugs if they had to. And obviously this is years back in terms of the companies like Google and Facebook, as we might know. But even today, I think it's a core point to get someone technical involved in that core team. And technical skills are so hard to fight for. In terms of percentage of equity that comes out, there's a really good book that I reference, or was going to reference. It's called Slicing Par. They've got a website as well where you can work through a system of working that out over time. There's some good schemes, like in the UK with an EMR scheme, where you can do it based on effort. At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, is this the person I want to be working with 5-10 years from now? And if they are the person, then equal splits or fair splits are the way to go. You're never ever going to accurately calculate what the equity should be if you are pre-revenue or pre-break even. So yeah, I would suggest you try to work with the person for a good 5 to 6 months before you decide on equity. That can backfire if you're the person who doesn't have the equity at that point in time. But I would definitely try to work with people before you start exchanging equity. There's a lot that you learn about people once you start working with them, before just giving that away. But it is not an easy decision, and it's something we ourselves constantly have to think through and work through. But very good question nonetheless.
Thank you. So the next one is from Mercy. Thank you, Andrew, for sharing very beneficial and helpful insight. Can you expand on how you get credit card for the business and flip?
Yeah, sure. So before you start a business in an area, there's a couple things. I think if you're a serious entrepreneur around it, there's a couple of things that could be really helpful. And one of them is trying to get a job in that domain. So if you're considering that, learn the skill sets, in that space. And getting a job does a couple of things, but it allows you to actually get a credit card. So paying yourself regularly, that's also one of the benefits of it. If you're paying yourself regularly, when you go to the bank, it's going to allow you to increase your credit limit. And I was quite, consistent around this, and just drove my credit limit to a point where I would never, ever really need it, but just kept focusing on it. And then flipping is quite simply paying before the interest is charged. So if you go do research on your region and you find out how many banks, offer credit cards and what are the terms they give you, generally you can get 60 days from a good bank. And what that means is from the moment you incur the cost, you're going to get 60 days before you're charged interest on that amount. And what that essentially means is the amounts of expenses you put through that card has essentially given you 60 days worth of cash flow now. So if you view your credits outside of your actual cash flow analysis, and then you're paying that back after 60 days, at any point in time, you suddenly have a lot more cash on hand. You're able to pay suppliers, and it's a repeatable system if you understand how it works. Sometimes you can get credit cards, for much longer payment terms than that, but those are generally in more established financial markets. So yeah, you don't want to be paying the interest on the credit card. That's really when the danger hits. But if you can time it right, that you do it before there is interest charged, it's a great vehicle to give you some cash on hand.
Thank you. So the last question before we round up is, hi, Andrew, many thanks for your presentation. I would like to know how you were able to handle sales with your seniors, especially considering that in a country like Nigeria, this requires physically fit staff that can hit the numbers.
We've done a lot of our sales ourselves as founders. I mean, it depends what industry you're in. I don't have huge amounts of experience in running a sales team, but I do know that often expecting a salesperson to sell something that the founder couldn't sell themselves is just ridiculous. And I think sales teams can fail when there's not a repeatable process in place. And that process is often built up by the founder. The founder is essentially at first selling themselves. They're selling the story of who they are, and people buy people. So that's what they buy into. And then you need to build a culture and essentially, break down your ability of how you are selling the things you are saying. But expecting your sales team to do something that you couldn't do yourself, I would say is definitely going to lead to mismanagement of expectations. But yeah, I'd be try rather, instead of bringing in a whole team and leaving them to do sales on their own. I think sales teams succeed when you start putting in process around what they're doing and define their job specifically, so they know their role in the process. And if you've got all of that in place, it would be very natural for them to hit their numbers, because the expectations and the support systems would be in place for them to actually deliver at that point. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Seems like we have more questions. So I think I'm just going to take one more and then we round up. What's the single most important thing you have learned as a founder?
Geez, it's a good one. I'd say reinvent yourself. So you are the biggest strength and the biggest risk of the business. You're going to get bored. You're going to get annoyed. You're going to get happy. You're going to get rewarded. But the biggest, most important lesson is understanding that you are a person outside of the business, and being able to recreate yourself, redefine yourself in each season allows you to give something to the business that they need at that moment in time. Because a day will come where what the business needs isn't the state that you're in, and the business needs a different type of leader or a different type of leadership ability than what you currently have. So if you're not growing at a rapid rate in new areas personally, the business will outgrow you. So I would say the most important thing I've learned as a founder is just to consistently evaluate what does the business need and where am I at personally, and then how do I reinvent myself? Is there something that I have at this season? Do I need to change, my focus on the things I'm giving to this business? But what does the business need at this stage right now? Because often there's other people around you who the business needs a lot more than you at certain stages. Maybe at first you were needed, but 2-3 years down the line, there's other skill sets you're going to need around you, and not knowing yourself and your own season you're in is really going to hinder the entire business from growing.
Thank you so much, Andrew. This was a very insightful session. And if you have any more questions for Andrew, I think you can just share your email where people can reach out to you. So again, this webinar is being recorded, and if you had joined us halfway through, you would get an email by the end of this week with a link to watch this webinar. But if you don't receive that, you can also find that on our YouTube channel called Flutterwave. And if you have any support issues or things that you'd like to ask us to, you can reach out to us at hi@flutterwavego.com or our social media channels. That is the Flutterwave on Instagram and also on Twitter. But if you want for our Twitter issues, you can search for FLW support and would be happy to assist you with anything you're having.